Hey, come on in and spend some time with the film hobbyist. My name is Lydia, and I love movies. We're here in my backyard. You're sitting on a blue folding patio chair with a black metal frame. I'm in a large gray camp chair. It's a summer evening. The sun has gone down behind the tree line of the neighborhood. Before us is a circular brick fire pit, almost like a short well, and the fire inside licks the darkening air. We have tiki torches around the area, like a ward against mosquitoes, but I have bug spray if you need it. A little over a year ago, we had a conversation about the Star Wars television show Andor, an absolute masterpiece that I couldn't stop thinking about. I shared some about the significance of Star Wars in my life, and I promised you that one day we would have a conversation about a Star Wars movie, probably The Empire Strikes Back. Now, on a sticky summer night in mid-August, before we head into the fall, is just about the right time. I was already obsessed with Star Wars by the time I saw my first footage at age 6. My older brother had talked me through a lot of the basics of the story and its world, and I'd already been playing Star Wars games in my backyard for years by the time the special editions had become available to rent. I was waiting with my dad at the video rental store, and on a special display TV, The Empire Strikes Back began to play. I got to watch the first few minutes, mostly. Dad made me turn my back when the monster attacks Luke. I was entranced. I had to be dragged away partway through the Hoth battle and begged my brother to tell me if Luke ended up being okay. At 8, some family friends sold their record player in a yard sale and passed on their leftover vinyls to us before they moved. And in that pile was the original soundtrack for Empire Strikes Back. I took to listening to it when I came home from school, especially as I got older and school became a difficult place. I would self-regulate listening to Yoda's theme, breathing with the legato strings. This film series, and Empire specifically, are kind of essential in my life. I love this world deeply. And like everyone who loves that galaxy far, far away, I have a lot of opinions about it. I try to pick my battles. I am actually fairly chill with people who haven't seen it, so if that's you, don't be embarrassed. I have no problem with anyone who doesn't like the movies or isn't interested, but I will argue that the first Star Wars movie from 1977, now called A New Hope, and its direct sequel, The Empire Strikes Back, are an essential part of general cultural education for how much they impacted all levels of storytelling and culture. There's a before Star Wars world and an after Star Wars world, and it's really important to understand that. Empire specifically is referenced and echoed in film and TV everywhere, so watching it for the first time would be filled with a strong sense of, so that's where that came from. The Empire Strikes Back is the middle chapter in a trilogy, kind of the first movie to know it was the middle of a trilogy. It begins in the middle of a story, and it ends in a rather unresolved place, just like a good Act 2 of a 3-act story structure. Act 1 introduces the characters, the world, and the stakes, and ends with the inciting incident, the event that spurs the story into action. In the case of the original Star Wars trilogy, that would be Luke emerging as a hero to destroy the Death Star, challenge Darth Vader, and give the Rebel Alliance their first real victory. Act 2 deepens the characters' relationships, raises the stakes, changes the dynamics, and ends with our characters in about as bad a spot as they can get. which is, frankly, how Empire nearly ends. Han frozen and kidnapped, Luke with terrible knowledge, a severed hand and a lost lightsaber, and Leia and crew barely escaping to the Millennium Falcon with their lives. They land in this terrible situation because of Luke and his anger, his hot-headed pride. He hadn't learned enough of the ways of the Force. He needed to let go of his fear for his friends' safety and his attachment to them and train with the great Jedi Master Yoda. Or at least, that's what Yoda thinks. And I think Yoda is wrong. This is a highly controversial statement, I know, both in canon and out. If you call someone Master Yoda, or describe someone as being like Yoda, that means someone who is incredibly wise and all-knowing. Someone you want to sit and learn from for as long as possible. Master Yoda is considered to be the perfect teacher. Maybe a little eccentric, but the person you can trust most of all. In canon, he's the wisest of the wise, so good and humble that he has even given up the appearance of wisdom. Anyone who speaks ill of Yoda is clearly a bad guy. He's the most trustworthy Jedi ever, 900 years of teaching and serving the Force, and yet, I think he got this wrong. I have to acknowledge some fuzziness with so-called canon here. The meta-mythology of Star Wars is that George Lucas wrote out a 9-part series and decided to direct the middle 3, with the knowledge of the other 2 parts in his head. That's not actually an accurate picture of how Star Wars came to be. Yes, Lucas had a sketch of things, but we have to acknowledge that a lot changed between films. In A New Hope, George Lucas did not know that Luke and Leia were siblings. Absolutely did not know that. He would have made different choices for sure if that had been at all on his mind. And it's pretty clear that some of the plot of Return of the Jedi wasn't pre-planned. A second Death Star? That's a choice that screams rewrite. Yoda dying randomly in the beginning? Yeah, that also feels anticlimactic when you watch Empire and Jedi back to back. So my discussing these 2 films as if they are a continuing story with pre-planned consequences is definitely a suspension of disbelief kind of thing. In The Empire Strikes Back, Luke arrives on the swamp planet of Dagobah with a confidence edging on impetuosity. He's been through many trials and difficulties already and has survived because of his connection to the Force, the energy that flows through and around all living things that binds the universe together. Luke isn't cocky, but he is secure in his courage and skill. He's not afraid. And he's open to following his destiny in weird places. I mean, that's how he's landed on Dagobah in the first place. He saw a vision of his dead mentor while he was passing out from hypothermia and has decided to pursue what it told him. Now, part of Luke's time on Dagobah with Yoda is realizing what he doesn't know. He assumes a great Jedi Master will look outwardly like a powerful warrior. Yoda does not. He assumes learning the Force will be really cool and exciting. He learns that it's much more of a mental and spiritual journey than a physical one, although all the flipping on vines challenges this a little. Luke realizes that he's often distracted by what's coming next rather than what's happening now, and he struggles to get over his materialistic framing of the world for a spiritual understanding. This learning is centered around 3 big failures in his training. First, there is his vision in the magic cave. Now, this scene is really weird and hard to understand, which is why I love it. But here's the best way to understand it. Yoda is giving a lesson on the 2 sides of the Force, the light side being when you are calm and at peace, and the dark side when you are angry and afraid. They come near to the cave, which Yoda says is a place strong in the dark side, and tells Luke that if he goes there, he won't need his weapons. Luke, on edge and used to relying on his weapons in a tight spot, ignores him. Inside, Luke sees Darth Vader. He takes the offense, extending his lightsaber and attacking his enemy. Luke overpowers and beheads him, only to find that Vader's mask reveals his own face inside. This is a failure. Luke approached with aggression and anger and learned that such actions will only hurt himself in the end. He will become the evil he seeks to destroy, which will be his own destruction. Failure 2 involves Luke's X-Wing starfighter. While Luke is supposed to be focused on moving objects with his mind, his ship sinks deep into the swamp. He's distracted and panics. This is his only way out of here, after all. Yoda tells him to try and lift it with the Force, which Luke says is too hard because of the ship's size and weight. He budges it a little, but gives up, declaring the task impossible. Yoda, however, uses the Force himself and elegantly raises the ship out of the mire onto dry land. "I don't believe it," says Luke, which, Yoda informs him, is why he fails. Okay, so we have a failure of self-control, a failure of belief, and then the final failure of letting go of attachment. While connecting with the Force, Luke sees a vision of his friends Han and Leia experiencing great suffering. Compelled to help them, knowing they may die if he doesn't, Luke prepares to leave his training early. Yoda insists he stay, that by leaving he'd put all their efforts at risk, especially with Luke's lack of control of the Force. For the sake of the galaxy, Luke must put aside his friend's suffering, especially as in this vulnerable time he will be tempted by the dark side. To leave would be to put his attachment to his friends above the greater good of the galaxy. For Yoda, this is taking the easy way out, choosing his fear over what may happen to his friends to rush into a confrontation filled with passion and hate, rather than patiently pursuing the goodness of the light side of the Force, letting what happens to his friend happen, and emerge to fully stop Vader and the Emperor. But I don't think that's what Luke's doing at all. Luke sees that his friends are at risk because of him, and he will knowingly put himself in danger to help them. He's not leaving out of fear. He's leaving out of purpose. He is giving up his own personal spiritual desires in order to serve people he loves. But let's humor Yoda here. What would happen if Luke hadn't left? Han and Leia would still have been captured by Vader. That happened before Luke was anywhere near Bespin. Vader would still have tortured Han. Would he have frozen him in carbonite if Luke wasn't on his way? Well, that was still part of his plan for Luke, so probably. And Boba Fett would still have stolen Han away. Leia would have been held captive by Darth Vader. Maybe Lando still would have attempted an escape. It would have been more difficult with Vader watching. But even if they had made it to space in the Millennium Falcon, the hyperdrive would have been broken, and R2-D2 wouldn't have been there to fix it. Leia and Lando could not have escaped without his help, and he was only there because Luke was there. So now we're going to jump into Return of the Jedi. Dangerous territory, I know. Would the Emperor have been overthrown by Luke alone? Well, Luke does defeat both Palpatine and Darth Vader. But the Empire would still have had a second Death Star. Luke doesn't destroy that at all. It takes the combined efforts of Leia, Han, Chewie, C-3PO, and Lando to do that. So the Sith may have been stopped, but the galaxy would not have been saved. Now let's look at what does happen. Luke, yes, repeats the mistake of the cave by copying his offensive moves against Darth Vader in Cloud City. He loses control and is overwhelmed by Vader's use of the Force, and then his hand is cut off as he learns the awful truth of his parentage. And the Luke of Return of the Jedi is a humbler, wiser man. He keeps his promise to return to Yoda, who tells him that he's actually fine and doesn't need any more training. He chooses to confront Vader non-violently, to reach out to the last vestiges of his humanity with hope. And while he is enticed by Palpatine to embrace his anger, he stops short of killing Vader by realizing that he is doing to his father as his father did to him. I don't think he could have done any of those things if he had not chosen the rescue of his friends over his own spiritual enlightenment. Yoda's assumption in Empire is that general compassion will best lead to calm and peace and goodness, and that attachments will lead to passion and fear and hate and suffering. But what we see here is Luke mixing his attachments with wisdom. Yes, in Return of the Jedi, his desire to protect Leia leads him to give in to Vader's taunting, but it is his attachment to his father that stops him short of delivering the killing blow, as he declares, "I am a Jedi, like my father before me." If any of this thematic stuff sounds familiar, well, it's a big feature of the prequels. Again, acknowledging it's even murkier to interpret Empire by prequels made 2 decades later, but we are just echoing what was done in the original trilogy first. In the prequels, the Jedi Order is a huge institution. Force-sensitive children are found and taken by the Order at a very young age. 9-year-old Anakin is deemed too old. This is on purpose, because it reduces the attachments they have. General compassion, good. Attachments, bad. The Jedi are meant to be beacons of peace and justice in the galaxy. But if they don't have attachments, how do they pursue peace and justice? Well, they do what the Republic tells them to do. The sometimes corrupt, selfishly motivated Republic. The Jedi have essentially become the Republic's police force. In The Phantom Menace, young Anakin Skywalker is a slave. And do the Jedi care about freeing slaves? No, because they have no attachment to them. They don't actually care about pursuing freedom or justice on Tatooine because the Republic isn't there. So much for general compassion. And because they have limited their sight and power to the Republic, they do not see the Phantom Menace corrupting that very institution. And Anakin Skywalker falls, not because he has attachments, but because he does not have healthy, wise attachments. He has no examples of such. He is worried, selfishly, that he will lose his relationships, rather than being filled with purpose to save those he loves. And so the Jedi Order falls, even though Yoda leads it. And now, again, Yoda attempts to make the same mistake, assuming that Luke loving Leia and Han is the same thing as Anakin loving Padme, not understanding that Luke is perhaps acting with the most compassion by leaving. So how did we get here? How can we have this overt stated value of the importance of giving up attachments for the sake of general compassion and have a story which tells quite another thing? That's because of a meta problem: cultural values. Star Wars is heavily influenced by Asian culture. Yeah, there's the outward influence of Akira Kurosawa's samurai films on the plot, and the costumes and the production design echoing kimonos and samurai armor in their silhouettes and closures, but I'm talking deeper. The Jedi are warrior monks, not unlike Shaolin monks who practiced both Buddhism and Kung Fu. The Force is also heavily Buddhist in its influence, but its duality screams Taoism. The dark and light side are very yin and yang-esque. There isn't any reincarnation here, but both Obi-Wan and Yoda's disappearance as they become one with the Force is very achieving enlightenment here. Buddhism is very big on both the importance of compassion and on the giving up of personal attachments. Nirvana, or enlightenment, can only be achieved by this nothingness of doing dispassionate good. I don't know how George Lucas first learned about Asian philosophy. It's probably because he came of age in the 60s. There has always been a countercultural interest in the Far East. Orientalism is this fascination with those other people to the East who must be more than human, since they are clearly not the same as Westerners. But after the Cold War, the US embraced the importance of Western institutions, and their kids rebelled by looking for something different. So the Beatles did transcendental meditation and visited ashrams. The counterculture and the embrace of Eastern philosophy was really big in San Francisco especially, which is where George Lucas began his filmmaking journey. The two things are probably related. And so, George Lucas, also influenced by Joseph Campbell's writing on the Ramayana and ancient Sanskrit myths, decided to tell a story with Eastern religious influence and Eastern religious values. Except George Lucas was still a kid from a farming town in California who grew up Methodist. I don't blame him for not being able to shake the hold of the storytelling values of his childhood. That attachments matter rather a lot. If you love a girl, you would do anything for her. If you love your family, you would throw your body on the flames to protect them. If you love your friends and they are in danger, you will drop everything to rescue them. Because in Western storytelling, selflessness means caring about individuals more than yourself or your own wants. Not general individuals, specific ones. Attachments are kind of the most important thing. Because we have connections to people, we serve them. And if we serve with general compassion, it's because we would hope those we are attached to would be cared for the same way if they were in need. So I don't blame him for mucking it up, for trying to tell a story about giving up attachments to save the galaxy and accidentally telling one where the galaxy is saved because a son reached out to the father who wronged him, and because a father saw his son in pain and that attachment woke up his humanity. Yoda was wrong. And we are all better for it. Thanks for coming.